because we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no way we can ever lose hope. Not in anything. Not in forgiveness, not in aid and assistance coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not in victory. Because the descriptions we have of Allah Azza wa Jal when it comes to dua should make any believing man or woman know that there is no way they can lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You find that many times the companions or the non-Muslims, the Quraysh, would come and ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam some questions. And then the answer will come in the Quran from Allah Azza wa Jal. So many times in the Quran you will see Allah Azza wa Jal will say, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ قُلْ. They ask you about whatever issue. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنْفَالِ. They ask you about the spoils of war. They ask you about the soul. قُلْ. Tell them, here's the answer. Except when it comes to dua. When it comes to dua, Allah Azza wa Jal didn't say, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الدُّعَاءِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it personal. And He said, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي. If my servants ask you about me, then He doesn't say, قُل, tell them, but Allah Azza wa Jal answers His servants Himself. فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. This is the only time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say, they ask you and you can tell them. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if my servants ask you about me, then I am close to them. This is when it comes to dua and calling upon Allah Azza wa Jal. On top of that, we have descriptions from an Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, where he described, Inna Allaha hayyun sittir. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is hayy, from the word haya. How can this word be used to describe Rabbul Alameen, who owns everything in the heavens and the earth? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has haya from us. And haya, there's no direct word for it in English, but it's a combination of being shy and modest and bashful. So what is the Lord of the worlds going to be shy or bashful of? And the Prophet ﷺ describes that Allah Azza wa Jal hates for you to put your two hands up like this and ask Him, and that you return them empty-handed. Meaning Allah Azza wa Jal has to give you something. Either He will give you what you asked for, or He'll give you something of the equivalent, or He will give it all to you in reward in the akhirah. But there is no way you're going to put your hands up to Allah Azza wa Jal like this and return them back empty-handed. So it is a win-win situation. No matter what happens, you will win. And that's why when the companions understood this concept, they said something very simple, but it shows that they completely understood it. They said, إِذَنْ فَلْنُكْثِرْ. إِذَنْ فَلْنُكْثِرْ. In that case, we should make a lot of dua. You never ever lose with dua. You either get it in the akhirah, or you get what you asked for, or you get something equivalent good here, or a similar harm pushed away from you here on this earth, then you're never going to lose. So they said, then we should make a lot of dua. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahu Akthar. And Allah gives even more. So it can't be that someone in this ummah who understands these concepts will ever lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter how difficult, no matter how tight the situation that they're in. You put your hands up and you call upon Allah Azza wa Jal. You're calling upon Al-Kareem, the most generous, the most merciful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so generous that if you don't call upon Him, He will be angered with you. Narrated in Musnad Imam Ahmad, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man lam yas'alillah yaghdab alayh." Whoever doesn't ask Allah, Allah will be angered with him. And as much as we've seen people who are generous in this life, we've never seen someone so generous that if you don't ask them, they get angered with you. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. We don't compare Allah to His creation. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so generous that if you don't call upon Him, if you don't put your hands up and ask Him, He becomes angered with you. With these descriptions then, how can anyone ever lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can anyone think there is no assistance coming? How can anyone think that they've committed so many sins that there is no hope for them to be forgiven? Rather, there is much hope. There is always hope with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what sets the believers apart from everyone else. And the Prophet ﷺ said, يُسْتَجَابُ لِأَحَدِكُمْ مَا لَمْ يَعْجَلْ. One of you will be responded to. Your dua will be responded to as long as you don't rush. And so he explained what it means when someone rushes, and that's when the person says, I asked and nothing happens. And it doesn't happen like that. It's not instant. And we're in the world of instant gratification. So that has crept into our worship, Now, when we put our hands up, we expect things to happen instantly. But it takes a lot of patience. And that's why the scholars of Islam, they described when you want something from Allah Azza wa Jal, you ask Allah Azza wa Jal the same way a child asks the parent. The parent says no, and the child asks again and again and again, and then they cry and then they beg. They said, beg Allah Azza wa Jal, cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask Him constantly, and don't rush it, and don't say I asked and nothing happened. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't necessarily work on our terms, but He works on His terms. And it behooves us to trust the wisdom and the timing of Allah Azza wa Jal.